Welcome to the Stagecoach podcast. We're visiting today with Jeff Crawford, and his book, Honored Friend and Hero, is one of our featured books on our podcast. So if you haven't listened to it already, please go back and take a look at it. It's a great book. We've had a lot of really wonderful comments on Jeff's book, and he has many, many more books available on Amazon Kindle and through paperback. He's published by Dusty Saddles Publishing, and he's got a tremendous number of books out there, and he's a really brilliant author. So we're super excited to talk with Jeff today. So Jeff, hi.
Hey, Ginger. Excuse me. It is fantastic to be here with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, great. We want to know a little bit about your story. So when did you begin your career as a writer?
Somewhere around 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. I had always been a big time reader and had never really thought about writing at all. And I found out I was going to have some surgery that was going to keep me down for about 3 weeks, and I didn't know how I was going to eat up the time, and because there's only so much television you can watch. So I got to thinking about my past, and it's fairly colorful as far as being a professional cowboy and hunting and fishing since I was 5 years old. Started carrying a gun when I was 5 with daddy and my uncles. And there's a lot of stories that build up over 45 years, 50 years when you do those kinds of things. I mean, they build up for everybody, but those are outside the norm. So I said, maybe I'll write a book. So I had the surgery and I had the notebooks and the pencils, and that's what I did for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I wrote it, 6 hours a day. And when I got done, it was finished and it was awful. And it went into a desk drawer that nobody will ever see. But it was a lot of fun. So I wrote another one. And the writing got a little better. The ideas got bigger and more imaginative. The writing did not get better quickly, but it got better. So another one went in the desk drawer, and then another one. And finally, after when I finished the 9th book, something was different. And the test balloons knew it. I knew it. A lot of people did, and we published it. And that came out in 2013, and that was 28 books ago.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And you write as a discipline now. So how many hours do you think you spend a week writing?
20, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 hours a week.
Wow, that is
between 25 and 30 as a rule.
Wow, that is quite a feat.
I learned a while back, even if a publisher or whoever doesn't give me a deadline, I have to give myself one just as motivation. It's too easy to say, I'm going to take the afternoon off and just goof around. Every once in a while you need to do that. But as a rule, I'm strict on myself with deadlines. Maybe too hard, but it makes me push that much harder.
Yes. Okay. Well, what kind of research goes into your characters? How do you determine who you're going to write about?
Sometimes, whether it's riding on the lawnmower, driving through town, anything. The idea will come, and then you can't get it out of your head. And you say, okay, that's what I've got to do next. And I don't, by and large, I don't do any research. I only write about things, fictional characters and fictional events set in places and times that I'm already aware of. I don't have time for research, and I don't like to do research. Um, I like to read, but I don't like to study. So I only write about what I know or that is so bizarrely made up that it doesn't matter. I do one of the two. And that's what works for me. Honored Friend and Hero that you mentioned being on your Audible list. That was a little bit different because it was set in the Civil War, and that's a real touchy point with some people about getting facts right and dates right and things right. And I'm the same way. I'm a huge Civil War historian buff. Um, but the other books, I just sort of wing it and do whatever I want to do.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about Honored Friend and Hero and your character, Reuben Miller. How did you develop him?
You know, I mentioned that I had written 8 books that no one ever saw. One of those was Honored Friend and Hero. And it was such a good idea, I thought, that I said, one day I'm going to have the chops to be able to write this book correctly. And it took 20, 24, 25 books to where I felt like I could do that. And I didn't go back and look at the old one. I didn't want to be influenced negatively in any way. What I remembered from 10 years before, 12 years before, I thought was the major points, and I could work off of that. So I sat down one day and just started rewriting the book from scratch. And it ended completely different than I had ended it the first time. 80% of the events in the book were different than they were in the first book. But when the original idea came, the idea of a deserter who was so torn about what he should do. He didn't want to stay. He didn't agree with what was going on, the wholesale killing. He didn't have a dog in the fight. He went because he thought he should, but he wasn't out to change the world in some way. That wasn't one way he went. He went because he was he just thought that was what he was supposed to do. But when he got there, he changed his mind. And the worst thing in the world can happen is to be a deserter. Not only do you bring shame upon yourself, but you bring it on your family. So he had the choice of staying and probably being killed, or deserting and being killed if he was caught, or deserting and going home and putting this black cloud over his family and the people he loved. And he couldn't do any of those three. They just didn't agree with him. So he ran and ran and ran, and as luck would have it, he happened to find the one place that he could hide and be safe. So this book carries you through 18 years of him living in solitary and only speaking to about 2 people in 18 years. The rest of the time he lives by himself under the ground, hidden, not just from humanity and from society, but he's hiding from himself. The darker it is, there's one time in the middle of the book where he sees his reflection for the first time in a pond, And he says, I don't ever want to see that man again. So it's not that the people who read this book are going to hate him. It's not that the people around him, if they knew what he was going to do, are going to hate him. It was the fact that he hated himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what an interesting take on the story. And I think that it was, oh gosh, I think you portrayed very well what was going on in his mind, and his fear and his loneliness and his shame, and just some of the decisions he made maybe wouldn't have been decisions that we think we would have made at that time, but we fortunately have never had to experience that. And gosh, just living in solitude for 18 years. I mean, I can't even imagine what something like that would have been like. And then it's interesting how you, discussed in your book that he didn't understand that the war had even ended. So when
Right.
he goes back to the town, he expects to see the war still active.
It was he wasn't necessarily happy that everybody was walking around and just enjoying life. This is this is 16 years after the war had ended, and he didn't know it. But he was hiding and watching things happen on the street, and he saw a black man arrive at a door for a store at the same time as a white man and his wife. And the black man tipped his hat to the couple, and the white man held the door open for him. And that was a big revelation in the good way for Reuben. He got to see something he didn't think he would ever see. So there had been changes, and that one was a positive one. You know, um, that was a good thing. So there was a few bright spots in that book, but I don't want to mislead anybody if they're going to read this. This is not a happy book. This is not a fun book. This is not unicorns and dandelions. This is desperation at its best.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you portrayed that very well. It's a very interesting story. And you're right, it is a little dark. I think a lot of people are hoping that there's going to be a grand romance at the end. We had a few people ask if you could create a sequel. So
Yeah, I don't know if I want to dip back into that well. Um, I don't think I do. Um, it was see in the original story was the woman that everybody's asking about. She wasn't even in the first book, so she came along, and I like the way her life has evolved and moved on, and unfortunately, his is stagnant. Everybody else in the world has moved on, but his is stagnant. Probably the best way to put that I know of, and I've never used that word with him. But it's not just motionless; it's decaying at the same time. So yeah, if you like the darker reads, that's the book for you.
well, it's a very good book. And I know you write in a lot of different genres. So, we're specifically talking Westerns here, but my gosh, you are very varied in your writing ability. So tell us a little bit about that.
I am no different than a reader. A reader doesn't like to read the same thing over and over again. Um, I don't like to write the same thing over and over again. I had written 11 books, suspense and murder and just high drama and dramatic fiction and whatever before Raventail, part of Dusty Saddles, before they found me and asked me to do a book. Okay, so I wrote them a book. It turned into a 6-book series. And while I was working on that, they said, "Can you write a creature book?" And I said, "I don't even know what that is." And they said, and they explained it to me. And okay, so ended up doing a creature book, which I had never dreamed of doing. And that was interesting in a different way because I got to do something that I wanted to do and still give them what they asked for, which was a sea creature, but I got to set it in 1836 Nantucket aboard a whaling ship. And I'd always wanted to write a whaling story. And I ended up, be careful what you wish for. I got to write 3. So you have to be careful of that. But, at the end, I thought they were fun books, but because of the way they were written and the subject matter, I didn't think anything would ever come of it. And it ended up being the best selling series overall of anything I've ever done. People just really, really liked that series. So go figure. But I did that. And then they found out that I had written Westerns in the past. So Dusty said, "Can you write a Western?" So we wrote 6, 5 straight up Westerns and Honored Friend and Hero. And I'm in the middle of the 4th book in a 5-book series now. So that'll be 11 Westerns I'll have for them. Plus I write, I've got a couple of books over in Magnolia Blossom Publishing, another division of theirs, which is strictly romance. So I can write romance and horror and Western and adventure, and I can do everything except the back of cereal boxes.
That's great. It's nice to be able to be so just have such a wide range of interests and knowledge.
It comes in handy if you have to be able to. You have to really be able to throw that imagination out there, not just once for a story or a book, but then all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, we got to do 4 more books in this series, the same thing. And you've got to keep reaching and groping and searching to be able to fill those books up. And then, oh God, I got another series to do after that. It's fun being blessed with an imagination if you're a writer. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. And do you work on one project at a time, or do you find that you sometimes have multiple projects going on at the same time?
Currently, I am writing for a podcast, which is totally different than anything else I do. That's a lot of fun. I am writing the book in this series, which I hope to be finished with by Friday. And I'm also one half of a collaborative partnership with with a girl in California, and we're doing a book. She wanted to write a particular kind of book, but she wanted it set as a Western. And she said, "I know nothing about Westerns. I just think it'd be fun." I said, "Well, I do." And so we're teaming up and we're doing that. So, at any one time, I've got 3 or 4 different projects going on. And it can get a little confusing and a little harried, but it's keeps you from getting bored.
That's great. Well, you are definitely a natural born storyteller.
I get that naturally and genetically, I guess. My father and his brothers and my grandfather, they were all farmers back in the 40s, 50s. Grandpa came out of the mountains, raised up in one of those 2-room log houses with, everybody, 7 or 8 kids in one room. Grew up hard. My grandmother did. And I knew those stories. But it went even further than that. When I was 6, 7, 8 years old, my best friends were 70, 65, 70, 75 years old. And they were my friends because they were teaching me how to do blacksmith work, or how to find arrowheads, or how to make molasses, or how to run trap lines, because I was running trap lines when I was 7 years old. Um, so those people all had good stories, and I remembered every one of them, and I learned how to tell stories. And back then they called it lying. My mother did. She's just telling lies, but I call them stories. And now I just write them down instead of just telling them.
Well, and I learned that you play music too. So tell me a little bit about that. What genre of music do you like to play?
Mm, I liked country music up until they quit making it. So my country music stops about mid 80s. I like the 50s and 60s stuff. I grew up on bluegrass and still love bluegrass music. But I like old rock and roll, everything from the 50s through the 90s. Big, I'm as big a Flat and Scruggs fan as I am Pink Floyd and the Beatles fans. I love it all. I personally think that the choir is going to be filled with people that sound like Johnny Cash when you get to heaven. So I like a lot of different kinds of music, and I like to play it, whether it's acoustic guitar for bluegrass, or my electric guitar for Leonard Skinner music, or I like to play my fiddle or my mandolin or my lap steel guitar or my dulcimer. I like to play all of those. And that's what I did before I found writing. To eat up time and to keep from being bored, I would play music 2, 3 hours a day. Because you couldn't deer hunt every day. You couldn't trout fish every day. You couldn't go frog gigging every night. So you played music. And several of my cousins play music. A lot of my friends did. And on Saturday night, it wasn't, let's go to the movies, let's go out to eat, let's go do this, let's go do that. We would just sit on the porch and have guitar pulls, and we would just play music for 4 or 5 hours. So I did that for years and years and years, and then that writing bug sort of bit, and that's all I've done for 10, 12 years now.
Hmm. How interesting. Well, I think creativity just shows through in music, in writing, in art. And, you did lots of years of cowboying and
Yeah. Yeah, that was I knew when I started writing that one day I was going to write a Western, but I wasn't going to do it until I was a good enough writer to do a Western well, correctly. Because too many that I read growing up are just, they're just pushed out off of an assembly line, and they don't even make any sense, much less being good. They're just not. I'm glad to know a lot of the guys that work for Dusty and are contributing books to your show because they do things the right way. Those are really great writers, and they're doing a great job. But I don't know all of them's history. I knew mine. So I could bring things to the table that maybe some writers couldn't. I don't know that, but I knew when I talked about things being done as a cowboy or on the ranch, whatever, he was talking about research. I didn't have to do it. I lived it. I mean, I knew what I was talking about. When all of my friends after high school put on Oxford shirts and khakis and went to an office, I put on my Tony Lamas with my spurs and my Resistol straw hat, and I went and got on a horse every day. So I know what the heck I'm talking about. And it
Mhm.
comes through in a book.
That's great. Well, we sure enjoy your books. And what do we have to look forward to? What's up next?
Finishing the maybe the most interesting series I've ever written as a Western, and that's the Noah Wayland series. There's going to be 5 books in that series, and I'm just about finished with number 4. Um, it's about a retire. No, that'd be lying. It's about a ranger who had been kicked out of the Rangers because he was too hard. It's one thing to chase down the bad guys, but when you're too rough on them and so rough on them that the Rangers kick you out, then you know you're a hard man. And it was really fun writing almost an anti-hero when somebody is that good, but they can be that bad. Uh, that opens up the world. He's not necessarily wearing a white hat, not wearing a black one. His is kind of gray because he's riding that in between. And that makes it a lot of fun because he's the guy you call on when you need help, but he's also the guy who's not going to stop until a job is done. And sometimes that upsets people at the way he finishes things up. And to me, it made it interesting. So when we'll finish that, I've got one more book to do in that one that should have out by the end of June. And then I don't know. The next book will be number 30. And I think that ought to be something special. Maybe it's not to everybody else, but to me, 30 books is a milestone. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, well, good. We look forward to it. And so I know that we can search for books on Amazon under your name, Jeff Crawford. And do you have a Facebook page?
I do. I have. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. I don't know really well how to work those, but I'm on them. And on any of those, you can send me a message if you've got a question or a comment about a book, and I'll talk to you about it. I'll answer anything anybody wants to know. I'm not a snob of any caliber. I like talking writing, whether it's my books or somebody else's. But yeah, I'm all over the place. The Amazon under my name is the best place because it's got every book listed, and the links are right below my name. You can go straight to any book. And yeah, check out the Honored Friend and Hero that y'all were nice enough to put out. I think is maybe the second book, and then hopefully there's going to be some more that run through the audio. And if you have your fill of westerns, then read about a whaling ship or romance on an island outside of Aruba. It's all there. It's all there.
Great. Well, I look forward to it. I'm particularly the whaling ship. I just think that's going to be a really fun read. So I'm looking forward to that. Well, Jeff, it's been really wonderful talking with you. I've really enjoyed this interview, and we look for lots more. We'll hear lots more from you.
Well, thank you very much. It was a real treat to be here, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you.